letting everything slow down, get easy and quiet. Finding this quality of deep release. Exhaling through your mouth, softening. Inhaling, becoming more still. Scanning through your body once you are sitting appropriately. Remember to rest the weight in front of these sitting bones here, so that the weight that you feel resting and sitting, hopefully you're sitting on a firm enough chair that it doesn't just engulf your whole lower back, but the weight is all the way up in front and bottoms of the legs. We had more questions about this. I think it's a confusing thing because people are so used to sitting back here that they think this is where we sit, that we round out. And this whole area, your tailbone should be free. Again, unless there's a nice cushy chair that you're sitting in, you should be able to move your fingers around and touch the full length of your tailbone without it interacting with the chair. And then as you soften down through the body, letting that weight fall and fall, any place where you feel yourself catching it is a place that you either need to align or just let go of, and usually some mixture of both. We align ourselves so that we can let go. And then in that position, we soften. Soften your face, your jaw, your throat, the back of your neck, allowing your head to release upward, not falling down, not being held up, letting go, Softening the tops of the shoulders, moving your awareness down your arms, all the way to your fingers. Softening your chest, your upper back. Relax your belly, sides of your abdomen, as much as you're able to, releasing your lower back. Soften your glutes, your hips, your thighs, your lower legs, your ankles, and your feet as best you can. You want to get good at knowing what it feels like to try to relax. You don't have to become the most relaxed person. But in the same way that if I told somebody to clench a muscle, they probably could. Or if I told someone to get excited, pump themselves up, they probably could, just on demand. But when I tell someone to calm down or to let go of a muscle, people often have no idea even how to go about that. And that's a real problem. That leads nowhere good. In the same way, if I talked you into craving something, chocolate or some new device or something, most people are very well trained and they very quickly will start craving and wanting that thing. But if I talk with somebody about stopping wanting something, letting go of a craving, people might think it's impossible, even though it's just the same process but in reverse. And so we have to understand the kind of culture and the kind of situation that we find ourselves in and do things to learn the way toward balance as best we can. Del, welcome. Glad you can make it. Let the warmth of your hands soak into that space around the eyes, behind the eyes. 3 times. Take your time. Do you have enough room over there?
I do.
Feels good.
Yeah. It always does.
Warming and enlivening that space beneath the skin on the back of the head. So you're not just scrubbing your head and trying to warm it up or push on it, but you do want to feel that space, that fascial layer we're reaching toward with our awareness. Also, those points just at the base of the skull, your thumb moving over them and waking them up. Especially if you have shoulder tension. Working this line on the neck and the back of the head can be very helpful to relieving the tension here because it's further up the channel. And as we've been exploring, these channels relate and reach throughout the body. And if you can start to understand that map, then it will help you understand how you move and how you function.
Now I have conjunction junction stuck in my head.
Would you like to sing it for the class?
Conjunction junction, what's your function?
That's all I know too.
That's all I know.
Schoolhouse Rock. Melanie Green.
I'm embarrassed.
It's too late to be embarrassed now. You might as well just enjoy it.
Sorry.
This is the content people come here for.
Thank you, Del. That is very kind. Oh, cool. We got a question from Chris. I can save it for later.
Yeah. I got to see it, and it's easily answered in the realm of the class today.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Perfect day to ask about it.
Chris, you are in sync with the Tao. Laughing at me.
Between you and Shrifu this morning, these two people that seem quiet but secretly love to perform.
John didn't get a pun I sent him this morning.
I often have trouble understanding wordplay, especially when it's spelling things. I have difficulty conflating letters and things that people are spelling. It can get difficult. And both ZhiCheng Shrifu and Melanie love going back and forth with wordplay and puns, and very often I am left behind.
I'll put the pun in the chat.
You're going to include the pun in the chat.
We'll see how many people get it.
Oh my gosh. Are you going to include the pun that was on the whiteboard?
I will include that one too. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Each time we see Master ZhiCheng, or in between the times that I see him, I try to set up little gifts or little surprises or jokes for him.
Are you going to say it?
No. And occasionally write down puns or silly things for him to find later when he's in the middle of class. He and Mel have very silly senses of humor.
Still goes, John, you didn't catch this one?
No. But to be fair, I was in the middle of a class when it came through.
And also, to be fair, I use the word remarkable a lot. And so maybe your mind registered it as like...
I just thought you were making some statement about how amazing whiteboards are. Because they are. If you study chemistry and the polymer that they use on top, I find chemistry fascinating. I thought she was just talking about how great it is that people come up with this stuff. Today we are focusing on the small intestine channel. For those of you who are just joining us and are new to this class, first of all, welcome. There is a link to an introductory class down below that will make it easier for you to learn this set. But part of what this series has been doing is trying to teach people the basics of traditional Chinese medicine. And the channel that we will be emphasizing on the face today is the small intestine channel. And the small intestine channel, in part, ends here in one of the spaces in front of the ear. And so as you soften that space, become aware of the rest of the channel as best you know it. So the small intestine channel from the ear here, part of its movement is out to the cheek, but then mostly it travels back down, a little bit further back on the shoulder than is easy to reach for most people. In this space on the back of the shoulder here. So as you start to soften on the shoulder and you reach back along this line, back line of the arm, spend a little time making that extra warm. For many, many people, because of how we live, this area tends to be cold and weak. And so you want to make sure that it gets at least your touch and warmth from your hands. And of course, if you're able to, awareness sinking in deep below that point. But maybe spend an extra moment just above the elbow here, the bony point of the elbow. And with your awareness, you can trace a path down to the little finger, but also all the way up along the neck to the ear. Where your awareness rests, qi tends to move and try to follow. It's all part of the same system. And so by placing your awareness in these areas of the body, we have an increased amount of life there. It's not just qi as some mysterious force, it's liveliness, it's blood flow. A number of you have heard me talk about the study that I was part of, where by moving my mind between fingers, blood flow would increase in each of those locations. And it's not a magic trick, it's just how we function. And so by learning how to feel that space inside the body, this starts to fill those channels. It starts to fill these areas that we've been talking about. It's one of the really wonderful ways to fill the channels and heal the body. Simply by moving your mind there. And remember, the quality of your mind also matters. If you're gripping and tightening, or if you're angry and controlling. But then I have a question for everybody. We're moving qi around the body using these various methods like touch and awareness, breath, posture. But what are the main ways that we gather qi, that we nurture qi in the body? It's a question for you. allowing your awareness to soak into these spaces, nourishing and filling the qi, but it's only drawing upon the qi that we already have within our system. There are certainly lots of ways to dissipate and expend our qi, but only so many main ways that we have of gathering it back. Large intestine 4, small intestine 3. Remember, today we're emphasizing this small intestine line on the face mostly, but as a reminder for the arm. So you want to let your awareness gather and accumulate there. Perhaps you can feel that movement from the little finger all the way up behind the shoulder and the shoulder blade, all the way up the neck to the ear. Taking your time, letting go, feeling the warmth and liveliness gather in that space beneath your hands as best you can. Softening and softening, letting go. And then again, as you move down the arm, emphasizing that line in the back of the arm, the point of the, above the axillary crease here, the armpit crease, all the way down the back of the arm. Pointing down toward that little finger. Emphasizing the spot just above the elbow for a bit. Make certain that it's warm, relatively nourished. Lung 5, softening. And so again, I can use points to allocate the energy in my body to various places, help things move up, help things move down, in or out, release stagnation, set things free, tell energy that's in one spot of my body to move to another, which can be really helpful if one spot is excess and another spot is deficient. But if I'm exhausted, I can't use acupuncture to solve my deep exhaustion. the thing that helps that is sleep, nutrition. These are main ways that we gather qi into our bodies, without which we will die, no matter how much needling we do, no matter how much, gathering qi from the sun or something. Sun is another way that we gather. It's not nearly as much as food, but it is nourishing. Breath is a very important one. If we stop breathing, we don't last very long. And so those qualities of understanding how we gather makes a big difference. So if I exercise or do Qigong movements appropriately, then I can take the energy I have and move it around, keep it from being stagnant. And also I can increase my body's ability to gather qi. So if I exercise and it helps my digestion, for instance, then when I eat, I actually get more qi from that food than I would otherwise, which is just a way of saying that I digest my food better. And yeah, Chris mentions warming the body by adding heat to the body. That is a way we can gather qi to nourish a deficiency, because we're literally adding something to the body. But the main way is food, rest, breath. And without these things, we fall apart pretty quickly. And so as we're moving qi around from one space to another, just recognize that you might feel more energized, for instance. If I take all the qi in my legs and I rush it up into my head, I will feel very alert, even if I'm exhausted. And people do that with stress and anxiety and different kinds of Qigong methods. And they feel like gods afterward because all of their energy's up here and they're, wow, and, oh, this is amazing. And then they collapse because they weren't actually nourished. They just pushed their qi up. And the same thing, somebody who can have plenty of energy, they're well nourished, but all their qi is stuck, or maybe it's collapsing through their body. And so they go out for a walk or they go exercise and their lives change, because now they feel super energized because they had enough energy. They just needed to move it around. And so we have to understand often what we're doing and why. If you are deeply deficient, there are only certain major ways, just as a human, for you to fix that. And so you want to make sure not to neglect those things and try to replace them with other things, as a lot of teachers will have you do. There's a lot of frauds out there trying to push what they're doing as more important than sleep, more important than food. I just heard a meditation teacher talk about this. He's talking about his teacher who went for years and years without sleep. Oh, he was so amazing. And then now he talks about how his teacher like barely functions. So he falls asleep in the middle of a sentence and can't. He's like always foggy because he's always half awake. But he was talking about it as though it was a good thing. It's very strange. And we sort of fool ourselves into thinking that we recognize spirituality, in this case, in sleepiness. And so you want to make sure that you nourish yourself in all of the obvious ways. Go to bed on time. Get a good night's sleep, if you can. Eat food. Eat good food, healthy food, nutritious food. Not too much, but definitely not too little. When you breathe, try to breathe air that's not filled with smoke or smog, if you have that opportunity. These kinds of things make a tremendous difference that no amount of Qigong will make up for. And so you want to start with those kinds of basics. In the way that I was talking about before, where I gave everyone the homework of just like cleaning up their room, cleaning up their house. It can make a huge difference in your sense of well-being, and it's so simple. Sometimes that kind of stuff it has to come first.
comes, folks.
You're the only one that notices. Someday I'll make a compilation of all of those moments. So one of the points on the small intestine channel, small intestine 3, it does a lot of wonderful things. And one of the things it does is it is a confluence point for the dumai, that governing vessel that runs along the back of the body and contains a lot of like the expression of yang energy in the body. But as I was mentioning in the classes on the 8 extraordinary vessels, it's mostly associated with essence. It's mostly associated with the stuff that comes before we use our body. So that's kind of like the deep reservoirs of places that we can draw energy from if we need to. And so when places are very weak or deficient, for instance, if somebody's spine is cold and weak and lacks energy, you can needle points like small intestine 3, and this draws from this deep reservoir to help pull energy into the spine, for instance. It kind of nudges the body to draw on its savings account, to put some money into the checking account. And just using that as a metaphor, you can start to see how that can become problematic over time. And this is something that people do with their Qigong practice, their meditation methods, with caffeine and other stimulants. They draw on their savings account and they sort of pay forward. You're only born with X amount of money in your essence savings account. This is how much life you have left. And people say, well, I want to have more energy now. So maybe I take a whole bunch of stimulants and I feel much more energized. I feel great. But you didn't actually get more energy. You just drew upon your deeper resources. So your whole system got a little bit weaker overall. Your life got a little bit shorter, but you feel better in the moment, which sometimes is really worthwhile, especially if you have plenty of resources. But then if you talk with somebody that spent their life doing that and their resources got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then they finally got to the point in their life where they spent all their energy to get there, but now that their resources are empty, their bank account is empty, but now they're supposed to still be living this life that they've set up for themselves, but now they're exhausted. And so this is really common. And so, for instance, if I decide to work with the 8 extraordinary vessels all the time, I can really help to balance and nourish and nurture those parts of my body that need a little bit extra help. But it does draw upon the deeper resources a little bit. So if you don't have them, you don't necessarily want to do that. So this is answering a specific question that somebody had. But most important is to recognize that I could do the same thing with Qigong meditation methods. I can burn up my essence and flood my body with energy. It's a fire method. You can do it all the time. I used to have the habit of doing it. But as you do that, your life gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and overall you become weaker and weaker. And you have to be careful about what you're doing. What we want to do is nourish ourselves now, fill up our checking account, and at the end of the day, the money that we didn't spend, some of it goes back into our savings. And so our lives get a little longer. But you want to fill and nourish, you want to put more in than you're taking out. It's a general principle for this method that we try to follow. It's the way we can live a little bit longer. Do you think that makes sense as a metaphor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, really changed my perspective the first time I heard you say that. I didn't really understand how caffeine worked either.
Yeah, caffeine is the mild version of those stimulants that people use. Yeah, and caffeine isn't bad. Don't get me wrong.
No. I actually listened to a podcast, Science Versus, that confirmed it's not inherently bad.
That's right. Yeah, Science
Which
Versus is a great
huge
podcast.
relief.
Yeah. It's like everything, it's how people use it.
Right.
You can use these things in a balanced way to make you more alert and more comfortable. And then you still eat enough and go to bed on time. You don't overwork. But a lot of people use it to replace things like sleep. And or worse, they use it to replace things like sleep, and they do it in such a way that it tweaks out their nervous system so they can't sleep. And it's just a negative cycle. And so we have to find ways to work with these methods that are helpful. It's one of the reasons that ZhiCheng and I are hesitant to teach any methods that make people feel really strong and awake. I've had lots of people ask me about the method that I used for a decade to make myself never feel tired. It's just a Qigong method. But looking back on it, I recognize that I really did damage to my health using it because I didn't understand. Somebody told me it was good for my health. And so what I want to do is let people know it's good for the moment. It's making you supercharged for what you have to do. But as soon as that moment is done and it's time to rest, you want to stop using it. And it's nice to have as a method now on those times when I have to drive a long distance and wake myself up. But then instantly I stop using it and I go back to resting and being a normal person. And that's a lot of what I'm hoping people will learn, because these methods are now just all across the internet. They're imbalanced, they're unhealthy, and people use them to destroy themselves, and they don't understand why. And they're extra dangerous because they can feel really good. But we have to be careful about that kind of stuff. So as right now we are working with this róng, this conception vessel, as we soften, we nourish, and we warm, we release. Because intention makes a difference. I'm not trying to pump myself up and work this point to try to charge my body up. So it's not drawing on deeper resources. What I am doing instead is nourishing with my intent, the warmth of my hand, my breath, my deep sense of calm and kindness. These are nourishing things. And so simply approaching this area different would yield a very different result. And so that makes a difference as well. It's not just the points that we do, but how we do them. So part of the technique is not in simply what my hand is doing, but the relationship with myself, my hand, and my body. So our Hunyuan system that we work with, where this particular method comes from, within the Dragon's Gate Daoist tradition, is shaped to eventually enrich and nourish those deeper resources, to enrich the essence, and this kind of thing. But the method is, in a way, indirect, in the sense that first you have to fill all of your channels. You have to essentially return to zero. What I mean by that is you become basically healthy. Your channels are full, your body is open, you have no pain, you sleep well, you eat well, your mind is basically quiet. That's supposed to be normal. That's zero. Most people are negative 136. And so first we try to become normal. And then from there, once your body is open and your channels are full, then you can start to do practices that allow your channels to overflow, especially when you sleep. And that qi returns to your bones. It starts to fill the essence cycle of your body. It's one of the reasons you don't want to wait until you're exhausted to go to sleep. You want to be full of energy when you go to sleep. And then that extra energy goes into your savings account. But a lot of people, they think that in order to sleep, they have to be exhausted. And so they wait until they're really tired and then they fall asleep, when that's the wrong direction. Save that energy and go to bed. And then that sinks into the body and starts to nourish the channels and the essence and fill those deep deficiencies. So as you make contact with your body, recognize that this intention matters. We're warming and nourishing the channels. Our awareness soaks in, which draws energy into these spaces. A part of our awareness is this quality of friendliness, kindness, that is also nourishing. It's soothing. Part of what uses up all of the qi in our body, is exhausting for us, is having our nervous system constantly tuned up to 1,000,000. Our mind is always circling. Our emotions are rushing all over the place. And so you want to have that capacity to slow down, because those things are considered like fire, where they just burn up all your resources. You're just tossing all of your resources into the fire of your spinning mind or your raging emotions. And so you want to be able to slow down. And that's part of what makes this practice so nourishing. Not just that it's directly warming and healing the channels and this fascial layer, but that it's trying to put out some of the fires that are burning up all the energy all the time.
Strickland and I are exchanging puns right now.
I wondered what was going
And
on.
the ball is in my court,
Pun exchange?
and I can't think of anything.
What was the last pun?
I don't think I can say that.
Okay.
It's of a political nature.
Ah. You two are unstoppable. Feeling your awareness slow down. Your nervous system slow down. All of the fire in your body and in your mind and your emotions become calm, quiet, and cool. waiting for that sense of settling. This is another very nourishing quality. So even these internal alchemical practices, these Neidan methods of our awareness gathering inside, and we eventually start to heat things up and generate qi, even that is based on drawing upon our deeper essence levels, which is why people who are super exhausted, we would tell them to not do too much of these internal strength practices. Quiet meditation in the space is okay, but trying to make use of your dantian, pushing qi around in this certain way that people know, it's all over the internet, so I feel like I have to address it, that draws upon your essence. And so we want to make sure that we are quiet and settled and well nourished. It's one of the reasons that meditation can't replace sleep. ZhiCheng was telling a story about a monk that he visited who famously never slept. And ZhiCheng went to go visit him on the mountain as a Daoist wandering around. And this man was falling to pieces. He was one of the most unhealthy people he'd ever seen, because he had no nourishment. He was moving his qi. He was an expert, super quiet, amazing meditator, and his body was falling to pieces as compared to all these other teachers that are, 100 years old and just incredibly vibrant. And so you have to not delude yourself about what we're feeling. Just because we can make ourselves feel really good doesn't mean we're not tearing ourselves to pieces. We have to follow the lessons of the teachers that got to go through and destroy themselves, and then tell their students, maybe we shouldn't practice that. And don't follow people who are just inventing things in the moment. That happens a lot. They have no idea what's going to happen after they spend their life practicing it, yet they teach it to thousands and thousands of people who now teach it to others and damage each other. It's kind of an endless cycle. Softening the back. Easy. Yeah, there are all kinds of stories of people who use methods to become super people. They don't eat, they fly upon the clouds. And I've certainly met monastery religious people that come that believe these things. They believe that this immortal master flew away on a crane. Like, literally believe it. They believe that these people would become invisible or reappear elsewhere. And maybe it's true, but I can tell you that I have zero reason to believe that it's true. I think it's just stories that people tell. And it's interesting, having had the chance now to study with various masters, that I watch the people around them start to make up stories about them. And even around Master ZhiCheng, who does not tell stories about himself. He doesn't make things up. But I've heard among various students, people now telling stories about things that happened when I was there, and these things did not happen. But I'm certain it's not stopped them from telling them around and passing these stories around, and they become folklore and legend, and people want to believe it. And so I reserve my judgment about it, but I remain skeptical until I meet a single person that gives me a single reason to think that any of these magical stories are true. Until then, we eat, we breathe, we sleep, we live like normal people. We try not to do crazy things. We slow down, we relax, we take naps. We wear warm socks in the winter. And if possible, don't believe things just because we hear them. Find out for ourselves. Because as we've all noticed, there's at least a few people in power that lie. And these teachers are often, I have personally discovered, not any different. But it is interesting because yesterday I watched a video of a magician just doing magic tricks. And it was amazing. It was mind-boggling to watch, as a lot of these things are. I genuinely cannot fathom how this person did these tricks. And yet, fortunately, this person says, oh yeah, they're just tricks. And I hope you enjoy them. But I can imagine this person in another context, not on video, doing this for an audience and saying it's real magic. Follow me, I'm God. And there would be some large number of people that would believe it, for sure. And because it looks real, but it doesn't mean that it is. And there's a whole history of this thing happening. Con men starting religions, charlatans using tricks, and they look real, and we can't imagine how they'd be other ways. And when I asked ZhiCheng about it, he kind of shook his head, and he said, one of the biggest things to ask people is, if people want those things, why do they want them? Which is a really good question. Because people want power, they want fame, they want acknowledgement, they want something. And that is the exact opposite of what our practices are supposed to do, because wanting causes suffering. We have to get free of needing things like that. And just because people are asking about it, no, I tend to not believe the miracle stories in old books, because just in my own life, I've seen people turn normal things into miracle stories. And I can't imagine what would happen after thousands of years of people doing that. Ultimate game of telephone. But I could be wrong. I will personally give $1 million to somebody who will come up to me and demonstrate the supernatural.
Just give us time to make that money.
Yeah. Well, and there's already those things out there. All somebody would have to do is move a single speck of dust with their mind, and the James Roundy Foundation would give them a few $1 million. But it's never happened once. James Roundy Foundation. Look it up. Very worth knowing about. That was one of the things that really helped me get free of my need for magical thinking, because I spent my life hunting for that stuff. It's just frauds everywhere as far as I can tell. I could be wrong. Maybe those people really are just hiding in a forest somewhere, not willing to come out for me or for millions of dollars. But so far, I just think that the real magic is in quieting the mind, softening the body, present, consistent, learning to be kind, learning to eat, learning to sleep. If you can do those things, that's like magic for most people. And it seems to be enough. But I do remain open. But I need reasons to believe things. It's a general rule. I want to believe as many true things as possible. Spent too many years of my life believing outright lies. I think our actual world is magical enough. I don't need to make things up or believe lies. Feeling the warmth of your hands soaking in. Delicious.
You need more?
Oh, no, thank you. It was just perfect. Remember to soften your hands. You have a very Christmassy outfit on.
I do.
And if anybody has listened to our latest Turtle Talk podcast, you can tell Mel how great she is.
Oh my gosh. Don't embarrass me. John spent a great deal of time editing it to make me sound somewhat
There's just a lot of material, a lot of deep wisdom to be working with. He wants you to go tonight so he can play Guqin with you.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That was one of the last things he told me.
Oh, man, I got nothing.
Unwise?
Yeah. I need to let it go and be embodied.
Remember to soften your hips, soften your legs. Keeping yourself soft, only going as far as you remain as soft as you can. Easing your waist, softening your hips and your glutes, softening your shoulders and your neck. If you'd like to lay flat for a bit, you're certainly welcome to. Getting nice and comfortable. Remember to support yourself. If you need blankets or cushions, find a way to be comfortable and to be able to let go. Just for a couple of minutes, or longer if you enjoy it. Whenever you feel ready, you can return to a seated posture if you're in the mood to do so. And taking just a moment to allow your awareness to settle into that middle dantian space, and then to gently expand outward to fill your body, becoming aware of your whole physical space, sense of well-being, the space around you. Thank you, everybody. Glad you could join us.
I will look at the chat here.
Oh.
See if we got some questions. Let's see.
My mug says, relax. I think I managed to answer them on the way through.
Okay, so you got Chris's question about the rhomboid pain with acupuncture and fascia massage.
Well, rhomboid pain, basically it's in that spot in the back that's hard to get to. So unless you have somebody to work on it for you, then it's better to emphasize working on the channels. So the channels that run through that area, you can access points further down, like behind the legs, for instance, in the calves or behind the knees, and that can help relieve that. Very often rhomboid pain is poor posture. Our bodies are gripping and holding, and especially as we start to soften our shoulders, they can get really sore for a while. And so if it's postural in nature, or maybe a local weakness or something, then the acupuncture or the massage will help by moving things a little bit, but the adjustment still has to be made through where the problem is at. So yeah, if you're wanting to work on that area, then probably the best way is along the bladder channel, along the backs of the legs for your lower back. And that will at least help to move the channel, but you have to correct your neck and your shoulders and how all of this is arranged so that you're not constantly gripping and causing yourself pain. Otherwise, nobody can stop you from hurting yourself.
It looks like we had some guesses between Del and Chris to a question you might have asked earlier. I'm guessing you asked about the 4 pillars or something.
Oh yeah, you were on your phone with your phone.
I was on my phone, yeah.
I answered
I'm
it.
seeing, okay,
Yeah.
you saw those.
Mel, for 90% of the class, was laughing and texting back and forth with Shifu.
Well, I was trying to think of puns, but you know how the best ones come when you're not trying?
That's the best kind of
Like,
fun.
I think I'm trying too hard. I have to let it go. Does John like to dance behind closed doors? Yes, and I'm not joking when I say this. He is dancing, I would say, at least 40% of the time.
Yeah, I spend most of my life dancing around.
Usually in the kitchen.
Well, I
He
just
really
spend so much
enjoys
time in the
cooking.
kitchen. Yeah, I like to cook. But yeah, for the most part, I'm always dancing around. I only hold still on camera, but not that well.
And it's really fun to watch because it's a very uninhibited dance.
Uninhibited dancing.
Let's see.
Do with that in your imagination as you will.
Chris has some feedback here. It's very debilitating not being able to sleep. Hearing you talk about these basics is great. Please keep doing so.
Yeah, I will keep doing so. I know it's hard to make this change. And this it's only 100 days that we're doing this class. And so letting these ideas soak in is really important. But yeah, these basic pieces, sleep, food, quiet mental emotional world, and enough exercise to circulate your chi around. Like without those things, nothing can happen. And we're just fighting uphill. We can still learn basic lessons, but those have to be in place.
Okay, we've got a couple questions here about prenatal energy. I think probably this was back when you were talking about the the savings account.
Yeah, I think I should answer them.
You already answered that? Okay. Chris says, wow, I had no idea SI3 drained your vital energy. How does BL62 fit in? I think it's called a couple point.
Yeah, that one in small intestine 3. Those are the couple points for the DO channel, the DO vessel. But yeah, it drains it if you are accessing it to pull from it to fill your channels. And so it's okay to do it some. It's not going to instantly destroy people, but we have to have this idea of nourishment. And so yeah, you can use the 8 extraordinary vessels for that purpose, because you remember intent makes a big difference. And the way that if you're needling it, for instance, that changes how you're accessing it. Technique matters. Mm-hmm. Just again, like I was saying, as I touch my body, how I touch my body makes a difference if I'm dispersing or if I'm nourishing. So we have to learn to feel those changes in ourselves.
Let's see. Chris asks, I worked Ren Mai last night and it calmed me down. But is that bad? Because I'm draining my savings, ?
No, but only, I mean, if you work it in such a way that it is depleting in nature. But if you're just being gentle and present and kind the way I try to teach, then that's nourishing. That's okay.
Let's see. Del asks, do you ever take melatonin?
I do sometimes. I try not to do it very often because I like it to have it when I need to sleep. Like if I have to sleep quickly or very early because I have to get up very early, or if I just feel that extra sleep will be important or it's being difficult. Sometimes I have difficulty sleeping on full moons, for an instance. Then I like to use it. I tend to not use it too regularly, but it can be pretty helpful. It gives me wild dreams, though.
Why are there stories of immortals like Zhang Sangfang?
I think I tried to answer that.
Okay.
I just think they're stories.
And did you answer, do you think the ascetic and miraculous stories of Buddha are true? Okay, you did talk about all that.
Yeah, and again, I am open to being convinced that superpowers and things are real. I just have to have a single reason to believe it. That's all. So I no longer trust when people say, but I heard about it here, or I read about it once, or I knew a guy. I just now know enough that seems to never be true. And I do investigate. Just recently, with a friend, I was listening to some interviews with a very famous master that people know about. I won't name. And I was taking notes and I was cross-checking the things that they were claiming as it went through. It took me a few days to do it, but I managed to go through them like, these are clearly not true. These things are impossible. These things are not possible. They like claiming things that happened at the same time, but like in different context. It didn't make any sense. But people just kind of swallow it and believe and believe and believe. And now there's whole myths, but all you have to do is the fact check, cross check, or go see for yourself. And people just never seem to do that. So again, if there's a reason to believe it, I will believe it. I'm open, but I do not want to be so open that my brain falls out.
Okay, we have another question here from Del. Why does it feel like during meditation, thoughts come up, and even though I don't engage the thoughts and focus on my dantian, the thoughts still go on and on? Mm-hmm. Does this mean my mind is not technically quiet?
Well, if you notice that it's possible to have thoughts, but to have your awareness not following the thoughts, and that's its own separate stage of practice. If you can notice that, then it's okay if your mind is making noise. You just don't pay attention to it. Your mind is doing the thing, and the same thing that it's another sensory organ, your mind. And so in the same way that you don't have to be paying attention to the sensations on your hands or your feet, but your feet and your hands are still sensing. They're still picking up temperature. Things are happening. Your sense of what's going on in your digestion is still happening, but you don't have to pay attention to it. And so the same with your mind. It's just that people get obsessed with their mind, and so they can't do anything but follow it. And so it's totally fine if your mind is doing its thing. Sometimes that's just a result of too much chi rushing up, or just there's a lot going on. But you simply put your awareness somewhere else, in the same way that I can focus on my palms, but not my feet, or the other way around.
And you did answer the question, does that mean my mind is not quiet technically?
Well, there are stages of practice where the mind itself becomes very still. And so it just depends on what you mean by quiet. I think for most people, what the practice should entail is not trying to stop their mind, because that actually is a kind of tension, but rather simply paying attention to something else, noticing what's actually happening instead of just the turning of the mind. And then usually what happens after a certain stage, when you stop feeding the mind, the thing that feeds the mind, this quality of the mind that we're often talking about, is the sense of self. And as you become free of the sense of self, the mind starts to lose a certain kind of cohesion, because most thoughts are about me. And then thoughts change, that the nature of them changes, and it becomes much easier to not pay attention. But in the beginning,
Steph.
Oh, Steph.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Have a good night.
Good night, Steph. We love you. You're going to have tea and a crumpet? Are you? She's just being a stereotype now. Steph, if I said that in the United States, people would think I was making fun of English people.
Tea and crumpets are great.
What is a crumpet?
I don't know.
Is that a
but I
real
want
thing?
one.
I think I want one now. We're going to find crumpets in your honor, Steph. I think it's like a mythical thing.
I'm sorry that I derailed your response there.
I don't remember what I was saying.
About the mind.
Oh,
The
just
different
about.
layers of stillness.
Yeah, that's okay. I think in the beginning, don't try to still your mind. Simply notice something else. Notice your breath. Notice your sensations of your body. Notice whatever it is that's actually going on, and don't follow the mind. That tends to cause problems.
Let's see here. Chris asked, can we help your pun game though? Yes, you guys probably could, but it's of both a political and religious context.
So probably not.
I probably shouldn't mention it. But I appreciate the offer. Let's see. And then Chris had a question, bladder channel, question mark? That may have been related to something you said earlier.
Yeah, the rhomboids.
And then Dell asked, do you think paranormal realities exist? Only if you see them, then you believe, basically?
In general, I tend to only believe in things that I have a reason to believe. And so I think that there are possibilities of all kinds of things. I think there's possibly a giant teacup made out of cotton candy and red velvet floating somewhere in the Milky Way. It's a possibility. It could be doubted, but I wouldn't say it doesn't exist. But I have no reason to think it does. And that's the case with a lot of the things that are these claims that I have no reason to think that they do, other than that somebody once said to somebody else that they saw it. And it's kind of like, at first I used to believe that stuff, and then I started researching it and going to these places and talking to these people and asking them to show me. And I have yet to find a single reason to believe it. And so if anybody hearing this in range of my voice or my psychic emanations want to come and show me the truth, I will very happily change the whole perspective on the world. But so far, the magic in the world that I find is natural magic of the Tao, just the way things are. And I think that's so far plenty.
And I think that is it for the questions. If I missed any, let me know.
Yay. Thanks, everybody.
And Dell is requesting footage of you dancing. I will get that. I will get it. I will upload it to my channel.
That's very nice. Thanks for doing all the comment stuff.
Dell says, I'm going to take you to a haunted house one day and show you the other side of things.
I have visited lots of haunted houses. I was writing a book about ghost stories.
That's right. You were a ghost hunter.
I was a ghost hunter. It was one of the ways I was trying to see the magic. I was chasing it. I chased it all over the place. And I never found a single reason. Same stuff. I really looked. I really cared. Like, I'm not naturally a skeptic. I'm naturally a believer, but I've had my skepticism drilled into me by constant lit downs of the paranormal. So yeah, thus far, I tried. I really looked. I wanted there to be magic. Instead, I'm left with the miraculous nature of our normal life. I leave the paranormal to, I guess, paranormal beings, which I'm not likely to meet. But I will, if somebody knows of a real haunted house and wants to pay to fly me someplace, I will happily go and sit through the night in some scary room, as long as it's not like infected with mold and stuff. That's apparently a lot of the hauntings. They come because it's filled with like toxic mold that causes people to hallucinate.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like those things, like that makes more sense to me. But I have genuinely tried. And so it's not that I'm trying to yuck anybody's yum, which is a phrase I've never said before. I just want to make sure that I am honest with myself and honest with the people that I talk to about what I experience. As I never want to make things up. There's too much of that, especially in this realm that we're in. People make stuff up all the time. And I think it's really destructive, clearly, because I grew up believing it. It's part of the reason I got into this stuff. And still waiting. Anyway, I love you all. Enjoy your practice. Thank you for joining me. Sorry for the tangent.
Well, these conversations are so fun. And thank you, Chris and Mel, for all of the great questions and comments and stuff. It's so wonderful to be in this class with you guys.
It is wonderful.
So
yeah.
Please keep it coming anytime you feel like it.